I think I would recommend everybody to write the book, even if they don't publish it. This is really helpful to just structure your ideas and learn as much as you can on a specific topic. I've been doing that for nearly 10 years, and over the last 10 years I've been led many teams, basically fed so much experience, so much insights, which is what I actually wanted to share in the Inspiring Team Lead. This collection of everything that people don't really tell when you become a leader. As a team lead, when you're in this situation, you need to really force yourself and encourage the team to behave more like human beings, trying to find activities or things that could be done.
Welcome everyone to a new episode of the Top Mentor podcast, and today we have Guerric de Ternay, who is a book author of the Inspiring Team Lead and an innovation lead. Hi Gerric, how are you?
Hi Victor, it's a pleasure to be on the podcast, and I'm doing very, very well. Excited about our conversation.
Thanks a lot for being here. It's an honor and having someone that has written a book, which is after all, it's not the first one that has been here in the podcast. It's quite an interesting topic that we will dive into later. So from your background and from what we talked about, and from your book, of course, you have a very good knowledge of leading teams and how teams should perform and how this is key to drive products, businesses forward. So I want to be very straightforward from the first moment and ask you, like, what do you think are the key qualities that a team lead could have to drive success in a company or in a self-proprietary business?
Say if I can summarize the key qualities, I would say two things. The first one is having a vision, being able to have this vision and translate it and communicate it to your team. And the second one is listening, being able to listen, to hear what your team has to say, and to be the best equipped to support your team to achieve the vision that you have set.
Those are great. I think that the listening part is very important in all roles. Then sometimes we tend to speak too much, and then we drive the value through the listening and listening to customers or your teammates or in this case your managed people. So that's a very insightful story. So, and regarding these qualities, do you think that you as a team lead could cultivate a culture so that they are spread across your management, so your managees, let's say your people that you manage, and also upwards?
Yes, I mean, for the people that you manage, you need to also make sure that you communicate that vision. And this vision can be either shaped by you because you have special knowledge of what needs to be achieved in a project or in the company. But most of the time, the best way of doing it is actually to collaborate, to create and co-create this vision together. And for that, you also need these listening skills that we mentioned. And this is often the one thing that I've seen among team leads, team managers, that they miss. When people get promoted as managers, they tend to be promoted because they're very good at what they do. They're specialists. They've proven that they nailed the ability to deliver on these projects or deliver on their job, and therefore get a promotion to then manage people who are doing the job that they used to be doing. And most of the time, they're always, I mean, they're stuck in this kind of mindset of, I need to deliver, yeah. I know how to do it. And they tend to impose on people this vision, this way of doing things, and they don't necessarily listen to them. They don't really hear their needs, what they're asking for, what they need for being supported and for achieving best the vision that they've laid out. And this is something that is so quintessential to being a leader that I think is worth reiterating a lot.
No, I totally agree. But and maybe a question that someone that is, let's say, listening to this and is on a management position that gets on let's say a large corporate, and you get some goals, some deliverables that you have to manage, and then you have your team which has different skills. So how do you plan, or what's your tips regarding the decision making, both in the short term and in the long term, so that you can achieve this culture or these skills that you mentioned for your team, but as well being able to deliver the business goals that after all is what the company is asking you to do?
So when you think about the decision-making process in a team, you can think about it in a spectrum. So on one side of the spectrum, there is the leader imposing and forcing his vision or the decision-making process onto everyone else. And then on the other side, there is the consensus-driven decision-making process where everybody has to agree in order to progress. The first one tends to be, slightly like dictatorship, and this is sometimes not resonating well with the team. There are situations where it's needed, especially when you're in a situation of emergency, decisions need to happen very quickly, or when you have, again, special knowledge on everything, and you're not able to necessarily translate everything either because of confidentiality or because maybe some of the people you're working with are so junior that they won't be able to get everything that is kind of in this decision-making process. And then on the other side, there's consensus-driven, which tends to end up either in very low-quality decisions because you're averaging everything to make everyone happy, or tends to end up in just paralyzing the decision-making process because you're trying to get everybody's agreement and it's very difficult to align everyone. So as a manager, as a leader, you need to sit somewhere in between, and that always depends on the situation. Again, I said, in a situation of emergency, you need to be quick, so you tend to go towards making your decision yourself. But then when you have more time, when you can communicate all of the information that is necessary for the decision-making process to happen, then you can make sure that you give this information and then hear what your team has to say about it. The best way of making it happen is obviously to get everybody to agree by doing this process, or like trying to get information from them as well, trying to hear their ideas. And this is often where like people miss the mark, is that they tend to give the information, they get some ideas back, some feedback from the team, and then they carry on with their vision. So it's like, okay, I checked the box, I listened to them, but they didn't really take that into account. And for me, this is one of the most important things in empowering your team, is making sure that they can contribute to the decision-making process with their ideas, with their knowledge, and trying to play to everyone's strength. So when there are specific decisions that need to be made in specific areas where you know that your team is actually particularly strong and possibly stronger than you are, empower them to make that decision themselves. Make sure that they're not just being heard, but they're actually leading in these parts. And this is something I learned from one of my mentors probably a decade ago. This was the fact that a leader can be like the generic leader of the team, but then everyone is leading or should be leading in specific areas, because you won't be the expert on everything. And even if you are, you need to make sure that you're empowering people and you're being led yourself as a leader. And then you're shifting this position in terms of like you're being led by your team and you're there to support them in order to get them to be successful in the areas that they need to win in.
No, that's very, very, very precise, and I agree with that, because I've seen recently some business stuff, and I believe that founders or leaders tend to act more like guidance but not executor, and then you can let your team be the owners of the stuff that you hold, and then let them execute, and if they need help you can support them and guide them to your vision that you mentioned at the beginning, and then the rest could be delegated to them, and with proper systems and with proper established workflows the team would work on your own, and you can even replace parts and it should be still working, even though we need to adapt, but it will still working. So I want you for giving some context, and where have you learned all this, and what's your career? So you are you have so much knowledge about the leadership part.
So I started my career very young as a teenager when I worked as a freelancer. So I started my own company doing a lot of graphic design and content marketing for companies. I went on to study, and after I graduated, I joined a venture company in Estonia. I worked as a marketing director for a couple of years, and then started my whole journey in consulting, in innovation consulting, for a company based in the UK. I've been doing that for nearly 10 years, and over the last 10 years, I've led many, many teams, and that has basically fed so much experience, so much insights, which is what I actually wanted to share in the Inspiring Team Lead, kind of this collection of everything that people don't really tell when you become a leader, things I hadn't seen in reading other books about leadership when I was trying to also train myself. And this is the insight I wanted to share in the book. And throughout all of these different projects that I've led, you definitely learn a lot. But actually, it's not necessarily by leading that I've learned the most. It's by listening to others that had bad experiences being led or struggled to lead. That I started spotting some of the issues and challenges that people would have. And when you're actually not the one doing it, it's always easier to find the solutions. And by observing that, I was also able to collect a lot of information, a lot of possible solutions to anticipate some of the typical challenges that you have when you're a leader in these kind of projects.
Yeah. After all, you learn more with your mistakes. I'm totally agreeing with that. That from making mistakes and after all finding the solution, you just get the path through them. And also what you mentioned, that seeing patterns is easier if you are out of the scope of the team or out of the scope of someone. Like in a third person view, it's always easier to manage that when you are on the battle, that you don't have that much perspective. And that's a very good exercise, like being able to take some perspective from your team. I think it's a really difficult skill to have, because it's not easy to be objective in that situations where you are especially involved. So
one thing I would add is that as a team lead, one of the important qualities as well, to build on your first question, is self-awareness. Often people, when they reach this level, they tend to believe that they've reached that level because they deserve it. And this is certainly right. But then they sometimes lose this ability to question themselves, to be aware of themselves, aware of their mistakes, aware of the things that they could improve on. They believe that they know better than the rest of their teams that are more junior most of the time. And therefore, they struggle to question themselves when something is going wrong. And I've seen it many, many times, hearing the stories of people who are being led. So for the book, I've interviewed a lot of people who were in teams, because I wanted the Inspiring Team Lead to just reflect my personal experience, but also the experience of others. And I chose to not interview other team leads, but interview people who are being led, so I could get the story from their side, not having a bias on what the team lead would say. And you could see, like, in the stories, a lot of the team leads would not question themselves, and they would always put it on their teams, and this is very bad behavior.
Yeah.
The first thing you should be doing as a team lead when something is going wrong is question yourself. I think the potential of people can be unlocked most of the time, and if you're not able to manage someone very well, there should be something that you could be doing better. And they tend to point the fingers at the people that they lead when something is going wrong, and this is because they're not doing the hard job of thinking, okay, I've been used to do things that way all the time, and now working with a new team, should I change the way I manage? If something is going wrong, there must be something that I, as a leader, can do better, because the leader is empowered to do anything he wants, anything she wants. The team lead can actually make the calls to change the team dynamic, to shape the culture in a different way. And so this self-awareness can be the unlock most of the time to help create the right dynamic and help making sure that the people in the team are the setup for success.
No, I agree. After all, you should try to fix what you have in your hands. Like, fixing yourself is the first thing that you could do. And then if that doesn't work, then you start seeing all other things. But normally you should try to focus on what you can control, and then try to focus on other person. Sometimes you cannot make someone work if they don't want to.
You can't control everything, and this is not what I'm saying. Like, if you get someone on your team, depending on the situation, sometimes you're not in like you don't have the ability to choose who's going to join the team, and sometimes one of the person who joins doesn't have the skill set required to get the project through, to deliver it. I don't know, if you're working on a data intensive project and you have someone who's not very quant person, you won't be teaching data analysis to this person if they don't have the right skill set. And you need to also make the tough calls as a team lead to make sure that this person doesn't also go through a bad experience of struggling too much. Try to find someone else who can replace that person so everybody is happy. This is also a tough call that you could need to make, rather than like saying, oh, like this person is not the right person, and then you're like putting so much kind of complaints on them, blaming them for something. Well, they may not have chosen to be on the project either. They're also like, as you said, like motivation can be something you won't control. If someone is going through something very personal that doesn't get them motivated, but still there are levers that you can pull. And maybe in these situations, these difficult situations, the best thing to do is to address the problem as soon as possible. We tend to delay trying to find a solution because either we have other priorities or we think that it's going to solve it by itself, and often it doesn't happen that way.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like, you don't being able or solving problems is always uncomfortable, even though you enjoy it. It's not the best situation to be, and we tend to like delay it sometimes a little bit instead of going through it and solve it and then knowing that the result will be better. So, and related to what you said about motivation and team members, regarding this recent situation that we have in the market, especially in tech, that there was some layoffs last year, and there are still some to be made, and the economic situation is, let's say, more strict than it was before, even though there is not like a whole crisis at the moment. How do you think leads should manage those situations when maybe your company is announcing layoff, or maybe you have part of your team affected? So how do you think a lead should manage these type of situations? Because it will be happening sometimes if you have like a long career as a lead.
Yes, and these are very difficult situations, especially when they're out of our control, and they often feel unfair because it's not because someone is laid off, especially in those kind of economic situations, that this person deserves to be laid off and made redundant. This is often a tough decision that is made by the senior leadership of the company. And then you, as a team lead, you sometimes kind of on the front line communicating this decision that you haven't even made. This makes it even more difficult. My advice is to be fully empathetic to what is happening, making sure that you're there for the person, communicating and it's in the right way. I think maybe sometimes the mistake that people make is to circle around and not be as direct as they could be. This is something difficult to say, but creating false hope for someone who is gonna be basically made redundant is also very, very, very difficult. So trying to get the tools that you have in hand, and every situation is unique, so it's difficult to create like a common theory, but basically trying to be there for them as long as you can, being supportive, coaching them to think about their next steps could be also something that is important to do.
And I also that you need to be, as a manager, from my perspective, you have to be accountable of that. Like, if you have to do that, imagine that you have to do the choice of between two people. Someone has to be fired or because of leadership decision. You need to be accountable of that because that's on your salary and in your role. And also, you cannot circle around and avoid it. Sorry, don't be a manager. And also, you have to think about the other, like the person that you're going to fire. Because there are persons, no resources, because sometimes in big companies that is lost. And I understand that if you are like the CEO of a multi-thousand people company, you lost that perspective, but your board they are persons, right? So your employees are persons as well. They are not resources, even though for the business economics they are actually. But you need to think as a manager in the one taking the decision of, okay, I'm going to fire you. The next one to my side, that they are persons and you have to be empathetic to them. And how, also think like, how do you want to get fired? Or how would you want your superior to fire you? In order to help you achieve maybe your next job. It's not the same like you get fired and that's it. Like human resources call you, you don't have access anymore, tomorrow you don't come to work, than having a manager that tells you, so this is going to be it for the time that you have left here. If you have, I will help you try to do some networking or try to point you to someone, because being helpful for other one, they will greet you probably their whole life if they find a job, for sure. And if they don't, at least you end up with a good relationship. I don't know, what do you think about this approach?
Yes, I mean, you have to be human as much as possible. As you said, shifting from thinking about resources to thinking about people is so important. And I always hear people talking, especially in consulting, oh, we need a resource on that project. And it makes me think of a story of a friend who unfortunately got made redundant during COVID. And the thing that happened, it was a person who had a huge impact on the company, was very liked by his colleagues. And so what the leader decided to do, which I found very, very nice, is to celebrate that person. So on his last day, rather than just writing a card and being like, oh, it was great to have you as a colleague, they had a party. Obviously, it was remote because of COVID. But for about 2.5 hours, everyone had prepared presentations or found photos of great moments that they shared with that person, celebrated the impact that that person had on the company. And obviously, that makes you feel, well, you said it. How would you like to be laid off if it was happening to you? And actually, this celebration, I think, is one of the great ways of doing it, by showing the impact that you had, showing you that you really matter. Like the work that you did mattered for the company, and that puts you in the right direction for finding your next job as well. Again, each situation is unique. You won't be able to apply that to everyone. But in that specific situation, it was actually really, really good for this colleague to be celebrated.
Yeah, and I also agree on the resources topic. I personally have refused a job because I heard that it was a resource. We are going to put this resource into this project, and I will say, okay, I won't be in this company. That was one of my first possible jobs, and it was a good job. But I decided that that's not the language. Even though you say it to me later on, I don't care. I don't want to hear it. Because that's not how I think about people, even though I understand that we are resources and we are there for something. We are people after all when we are working, and that's not the approach totally. And diving on the topic that you just mentioned about this person that was fired during COVID, how do you think, or what dynamics could be beneficial, and the pros and cons of remote working, and which is a very trendy topic about the back to office and all of that? What do you think are the pros and cons about both systems for a manager, and also if you want to set it as a broad like company type of topic?
Yes, this is one of the questions of the moment. This one and artificial intelligence are definitely the two main topics in the future of work. Remote working is something I personally very enjoy. That requires a lot of discipline, not just of managing a project, but also of managing the people. When we work remotely, we tend to be very functional because we're set in our personal life environment. So this is where we absorb the kind of good energy or the kind of the social energy that we need to function as human beings. And therefore work becomes a checklist, and you observe people working remotely. Every meeting tends to be very functional. We don't have this small talk or kind of laughs that you could have when you're in an office with other people. You don't have these moments that you share that are very informal, that are just talking about the next deliverable or the next milestone or the goals for the day and the activities, etc. So as a team lead, when you're in this situation, you need to really force yourself and encourage the team to behave more like human beings, trying to find activities or things that could be done to just make work more human and not be, here's a meeting, here's the agenda, let's go through it, in 15 minutes we're done, ciao, and then let's talk tomorrow. Trying to find ways to humanize the relationship. Remote work has so many advantages. Maybe the best one is reducing the commute time in many big cities. It takes a lot of time on people to do it. The other thing is, especially for parents, the ability to be around with their kids a bit more by saving especially this time from commuting.
Yeah.
Has also disadvantages. Some of the cons for me is killing a bit the creativity. You need to find ways and really force yourself to be more creative together when you're not in the same room. Especially the ability to just draw stuff on a whiteboard. Like there are whiteboard tools that can be used online, but they're not as effective as like just being there, like just drawing charts, showing what your ideas are, and building on each other's ideas. Also working with bigger groups. If you're running an ideation session, it works remotely. Sometimes it doesn't give you the same outcome as being in person because you will struggle to get the length of time that is required to get the best out of people. In person, I could easily run an ideation session for 2 or 3 days. Obviously, you get from a kind of starter ideas, starter thoughts, to something that is very well built up. If you're doing it remotely, you need to chunk that time into smaller bits, and you won't carry through the outcome that you would get in 3 days. It would take you more like a week or two to do that. And you also miss, when you work remotely, these kind of informal, impromptu kind of questions, especially for more junior people. It's really important. If you're an intern, you want to observe what people are doing. You may have questions that you won't necessarily feel you have the permission to ask on the kind of company chat system, or like in an email, like, because it's so much easier to say, hey, like, do you know where the file that I need is, or do you know how I could do this? And then this is like a simple thing that needs to be done, and you can end up spending like 2-3 hours trying to figure it out. Well, just asking can be very helpful. On the contrary, that also allows you to manage your time in a better way, because everything has like pros and cons. Being asked these type of questions all the time, that kind of kills your flow. While when you're at home, you're able to manage your time and kind of contain yourself and avoid distraction maybe more easily. Again, it depends on disciplines, because you can avoid distraction from work and from colleagues when you're at home, but maybe you get distracted by other things that are happening at home as well.
Yeah, no, there is pros and cons, and I believe that it really depends on the person and the systems that you put in place. What you said is like you cannot, it's difficult to do some deep work sessions, no distractions at work, if you are not like, which could be a good idea to have, like this, people wanted to be out of cubicles. Now you may have like a one cubicle to do 2 hours of deep work, and then you can do whatever. But also what you mentioned, I especially think that relationships are not the same. The contact, the close situations that you get when you are presentials, that's almost impossible to do, even though I've been remotely playing with my friends and all of that, and I can translate that to work, but I can relate that it's not the same.
Maybe one thing that I feel is very makes a huge difference is meeting people at least once at the beginning of a project, at the beginning of a work relationship. That changes everything. I think having this kind of personal, in real world relationship that you started and then kind of carry on online works better than just being online all the time. And if you can, and this is why startup retreats are very important, especially in like remote-wide companies, is because you get this kind of relationship ongoing. It's the same way, like if you don't live with your, like in the same cities as your friends, you can still carry on the relationship with your friends on WhatsApp or other ways of sharing your life with them. But these moments where you meet like once a year or every 2 years are so important. And these are moments that like fuel the relationship again with energy. So trying to do that, I think is really helpful.
Yeah, for I agree with that. Yearly meetings, if they are possible and they are on budget, that would be great. But yeah, I also agree that you can like to squeeze all the communication that you have to do in just one week in a year. It's key to success about for remote teams. So and there is a I want to dive more on a different topic which is related to the book and side hustling and all of that. Is how did you come with the idea of the book? Because I think it's very interesting, a very interesting topic, and also like how you been able to manage it within your work and your life balance and all of that.
So I love to write. This is something that helps me grow. I think I would recommend everybody to write a book, even if they don't publish it. This is really helpful to just structure your ideas and learn as much as you can on a specific topic. Why I decided to write The Inspiring Team Lead, I was basically trying to look for a topic for a new book. I had published already 2 books at the time. And then I started like scratching my own itch, trying to think about topics that I had enough experience in so I could contribute to the wider world by sharing insights that you don't get in other books. Because when you read a lot of the leadership literature and often in business books, like you see a lot of the stories that are mentioned in one book tend to be mentioned in a lot of other books. And so they all become the same. What I wanted to do is shape something more unique. So I found a topic that I could contribute to based on a lot of my personal experiences, as well as on the experience of others I have interviewed. And then the second part of your question, how I managed to do that side of a lot of other projects and a full-time job. I mean, there are two things. The first one is personal productivity, which is trying to find moments when you've done all of your kind of full-time job and do the work that you want to do on the side. I often think about the next critical task. So I have a pending to-do list. I use Trello with the next most important task that I need to complete for progressing in my side project. And this is what I do for the book. So I know what I need to do next. And then when I have a pocket of time, and maybe it's a superpower of mine, or then not everyone can do that, but I'm very able to shift from one task or from an activity to another very quickly. So like a small pocket of time is enough for me to just get the next thing done. Not the best way of doing deep thinking, and not all of the activities can be done that way, but I tend to have this kind of dual to-do list where I have like deep thinking work that I need to do, and in that situation I need to schedule the time, and then kind of let's say like shallow thinking work to do, and then in this situation I'm able to pick it up when I have pocket of time. And then the second part of the answer to the side project is I've created a system where I'm able to edit and write my book both on my computer or on my phone. So actually a lot of the writing happens outside of my home or outside of the office. When I'm in public transport, when I'm walking, when I'm just queuing, I'm always kind of contributing to the book and trying to add ideas or edit a part depending what needs to be done next. And so my kind of file in the book has a lot of comments, and again have like keywords that I use in order to spot the ones where I need to do more deep thinking in the book. And so for a specific chapter, I know that I really need to sit down and think very hard about what I want to write there, how I want to structure the narrative of the chapter, what I want the readers to take away. And then the other ones are things that are like just easy, like just things to edit, or a sentence that I didn't find was right, and trying to like just rethink how to say what I wanted to say. And this is more shallow thinking, so it's easier to get it done when you're just, I don't know, queuing or in public transport or in the train.
Yeah, no, I can relate on that, not because of writing, because I just use it for personal note taking and learning itself. I think it's good for learning, doing things like recalls and mind maps and all of that, and also journaling. I think it's very helpful to avoid
Yes.
forgetting about things. It's really good to have it like forever, and it's very underestimated, even though there is a trend about that. And also what you said is like the ideas. For me, it's also really difficult to, when there is a good idea, it's difficult to keep it from a long time in your head, even though if you don't concentrate a lot and you have a lot of tasks. And for example, I am a very distractful person, so I distract a lot and I switch very quickly, but not the good way, like the bad way. The capability to keep the ideas is just note taking on whatever apps. It's like, for example, I wake up early and I would say like this idea, and then I cannot sleep. Then I'm thinking about the idea, and over again I have to just take the phone or take a post-it. I am a very post-it person. I have it all over the place, and I write it down. And somewhere, and then I will release the stress that I have for about not taking that and writing it down. So I totally agree that in any moment, at any place, you can just have the idea, and then you will deep think about it and discuss if it's
It is so important. It is so important. I tend to have my best ideas when I cycle, which makes it very difficult to actually take notes on your phone. And sometimes, like you have a long cycle, so either like get it on myself to stop and write it on my phone, or sometimes like, oh yeah, when I'm done cycling, I'll be able to capture the idea, and sometimes they just evaporate, and you're like, this must have been the best idea I had. And this is often the case when an idea disappears. You think that it was the greatest thing, maybe it wasn't.
Yeah, if you cannot recall it and you didn't concentrate in that moment, then it couldn't be that good, even though you never know because you haven't tried to do that. So but yeah, sometimes you can use maybe digital assistants or something like that. You can speak while you are cycling or things like that. But yeah, it's
looking like a crazy person.
Yeah, but it is what it is, So yeah, I want to thank you for being here, and also I want you to share with the audience where they can find you and where they can find your story and learn more about you and your book and all your side hustles.
Yes, sure. So I'm not very much on social media, but people can find me on LinkedIn. This is actually how we got in touch together. And otherwise, they can find the Inspiring Team Lead on Amazon, and they can find it in ebook as well as in paperback and hardcover.
That's awesome. I will definitely put the links to that in the description. And yeah, for anything, I will put your LinkedIn so they can ping you and learn more about you and maybe get mentored or get some help in hand. So as mentioned, Gerric, it was great to have you here. I hope that people learned something. I really did. So if I am a future team lead, I will take your advice. Yeah, it was a pleasure.
It was a real pleasure as well, Victor. And maybe one of the things I would encourage everybody to do, even if you're not a team lead yet, is to think about the ways you're being led by others and almost keep a list of the positive and a list of the negative. This is possibly the best way to learn to be a great team lead, is figure out what are things that you don't really enjoy, that then you won't reproduce when you become a team lead, and what are the things that you particularly enjoy that then you will think about reproducing when you'll be leading a team.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah, well, so please do that. So yeah, thanks a lot, Gerric. It was a great podcast, and yeah, see you next time. I hope we can keep in touch.
Thank you, Victor. Definitely.